Good evening, everybody. We're here for another Hangout on Air, a series of several Hangouts that we've done in the past with several people being watched from Wing Tsun and non-Wing Tsun related people. Today we have a very special guests participating in our Hangout. We're going to be talking about the genealogy, the Wing Tsun genealogy. We have our special guest here, CPAC Master Ip Man, who's been for many years a Wing Tsun practitioner.
Thank you.
We also have Master Leo Mamura.
Hi, everyone.
Master Nathaniel.
Good evening, everyone.
We have Jones.
Good evening.
And Tiago Pereira.
Hello, good evening.
Okay, so we're going to be here for 1 hour. As mentioned before when we make the announcement, if you're watching this live on YouTube, you can post questions in any social network, Twitter or Facebook or Leo Zimamura profile on Google+, and we're going to be monitoring that. So just put hashtag Bate-Papo Leo Namura, and then we're going to be posting your question here. If we don't get a chance to ask the question online, you can still post your question, and then we're going to be addressing this after the fact. Okay? So we have a very special subject today. We're going to be talking about the Wing Tsun genealogy and its importance to all of us. And I would like to start by asking Master Ip Man, why is it so important to Wing Tsun practitioners to know about genealogy, and in what ways does it influence their practice?
Thank you, Nato. Honor to be here. And I'm happy that you guys are discussing this conversation. To be honest with you, in my early days, this was not important to me. The truth of the matter was, I didn't care where it came from. All I knew was the shortest distance between 2 points was a straight line. But what became more important as a teacher was the unique transmission of the system and the verification that the system was complete. So the great work that Grão-mestre Moy Yat did in carving the Chun chops and the genealogy was to prove that Wing Tsun system was complete. In other words, how do you know there was not another weapon? How do you know if there's another form? It was inside that work that we were able to determine the system was complete. But most important, the genealogy became unique as a transmission of knowledge that was passed down to us by Grão-mestre Ip Man to Grão-mestre Moy Yat. This is a unique transmission that maybe later on in the conversation in the genealogy could discuss in a deeper level. So two things, the completion of Wing Tsun system and the unique transmission of knowledge. It's very important to understand our genealogy.
Thank you, CPAC. Master Ip Man. Now, for Master Leo Mamura, thank you for being here again. And I would like to ask you the same question, see if you want to add anything. So why is it so important for us to study the genealogy? And what is the impact that we Wing Tsun practitioners we have by studying it in our day-to-day practice of Wing Tsun?
As Master Ip Man mentioned, I believe this unique way of transmission, which our Sifu, Grão-mestre Moy Yat, call it Kung Fu life, can be very well studied when you learn about our genealogy. You see, a genealogy is a list of ancestors. Each ancestor work in a different way, could learn in different conditions, and plus handle the system in a different and a personal way which we can call Kung Fu. So this particular way to learn things, Kung Fu, is unique in a Chinese culture. We don't have similar in our culture. So that's why I believe the genealogy is a very special tool to learn this type of knowledge, this type of art or ability which we don't have similar in our society.
Another, I lost your sound.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, beautiful. Got you now.
Thank you, Master Leo, and thank you, Master Pete Pahil. Nathaniel, would you like to start with any questions, or would you like to make any comments?
Yes, sure. I have a question now. Grão-mestre Moy Yat held a unique work in a field of traditional Chinese arts. He engraved in a stone not only sayings related to Wing Tsun practice, but all this genealogy. Could you talk about this work, please? These questions to Master Pete Pahil.
All of us in the not only obligation to make our Kung Fu good to our Sifu, but to contribute and give back to Wing Tsun system. It is our obligation. It is the way to make a difference. What difference, what a profound difference that Grandmaster Moy Yat contributed to Wing Tsun system by carving in hand the entire history and the Wing Tsun sayings passed down. This simple work as an artist is in stone forever, Nathaniel. Forever. So 50 years from now, when I'm not here, the history will still be in our family. That alone is a huge contribution to the genealogy and to the generations to come. Because as Master Leo Imamura mentioned, each one of us and each generation will have our own challenges to continue this unique transmission. We now have this kind of technology that we are on now. So for us to upload, if you will, the entire system and language it, because it is of my opinion that Kung Fu is a conversational domain. In other words, it only exists in language. You and I both learned most of our Kung Fu at the dinner table. That was all language. So that's why this genealogy, these chops that he contributed, that he took painstaking time just to pick each stone, is now history for us, not just to admire, but proof that the system is complete by who examined his Sifu, Grandmaster Ip Man. Very profound impact and rare in the Kung Fu world. Because as you know, to be an artist and martial artist is very rare. There's a big difference for us.
Master Pete, I have a question. So here in the United States, we have an expression, oh, it's set in stone, right? Meaning something that's not going to change. And you mentioned that, well, this is now forever in history. Do you believe that Wing Tsun will not change or should not change because Moy Yat set this in stone?
Thank you. But he also said something else to us, which was very, very profound and very, very few of us understood at the time. Remember, Kung Fu without system is not Kung Fu. Kung Fu depends on the system, is not a good Kung Fu. So, yes, remember I said this was to prove the system is complete. But for you and I to use the system, we will all have our own way. That's why Kung Fu life was so important to us, to access this specific intelligence through our own experience. So every one of us should be different.
So,
Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master.
Master Liu Imamura, please, about this work, Grão-mestre Moy Yat, when Grão-mestre Moy Yat start to engrave in a stone our genealogy, do you have idea the year when he finished this work?
Well, as you know, Grão-mestre Moy Yat and the artist Kong Chinan, they receive a set of stone, 51 to be exactly, in 1967. So, but they start to select the stones because the shape are different for different sayings, and plus select the technique or the movements or each subject they want to explore in the stone. As Master Pahil said, those sayings or the genealogy exactly when they put on the stone create a huge impact. Why? Because they have to select even the character, the Chinese character to put it in. If you see the genealogy, they select 210 characters to put it in, because they have to combine not just the content, but also the artistic aspect, because it's an art combined with content. So you guys know too, the style they use is a very formal, and the kind of style of writing doesn't have punctuation, doesn't have comma, doesn't have a point. So just people in the family can really understand. Besides that, the word, the character they select is not any Chinese can read it. I mean, they can read it, but they can understand, because they even use some part of classics. So just people really into Chinese culture could understand all they wrote all that. This is very important, because the way they put it is not with details. No, they put it the way we can approach the Kung Fu dimension of the things. So as my Sihin Pete Pahil mentioned, on the content is a history can be preserved for many generations, but we must doing our part by studying very hard, mainly us, because we are not Chinese, and we must understand what they did on their work. I've been studying this for more than 25 years. Actually, I've been studying their writings even before become Grão-mestre Moy Yat student, and still I wonder how they could go so deep on that. You know, it's unbelievable. So my admiration is that when I touch on the stone, most of you guys, mainly Nathaniel, Renato, they could have this opportunity to touch the piece of stone which is a treasure, a real treasure of our family. And I'm thankful to our Sifu to let this kind of legacy to us, because in that way we can preserve our style, we can preserve our lineage in a highest standard possible. So that's, I think, is the most important thing when we discuss about this our Sifu Grão-mestre Moy Yat works on the stone and the seal he made for eternity, you know, for the prosperity. I mean, for us, and after us for many generations.
Master Liu Imamura, you mentioned about the Kung Fu dimension. So, as a practitioner, how can I approach the genealogy?
As a Kung Fu guy, not a historian, not a guy who not just want to know some gossip about our ancestors. We must approach genealogy as a Kung Fu guide, because the genealogy, in my point of view, is a device, a strategic device to really go deep on our Kung Fu. So that's why the professor, I mean, a philosophy professor of a Grand Valley University, he called Pei Ming. He has Chinese background. Actually, he's Chinese and live in America. And he has a study when he studied all the Chinese classics on the Kung Fu dimension. So I believe we can also study the genealogy in this kind of dimension. Mainly us, because we are Kung Fu guys.
You know, I'm happy that Master Imamura mentioned this should not be about gossip. Not just storytelling, but as a Kung Fu guy. This would be your access to understanding how your Sifu got his Kung Fu. It's very important to make your Kung Fu good, because you have to understand exactly how your Sifu got his Kung Fu. Because we all know this very famous saying, Ip Man don't teach. Like Playboy. He go here, he go there, just hang out. But they also have the same saying about our Sifu. Grão-mestre Moy Yat, don't teach. But it didn't sound so good. But this, how we learn our Kung Fu. I have to use my Sifu's brain. I have to figure out how he learned the Kung Fu. He once told me, Grandmaster Ip Man have an old brain. This part, I think he implied like tradition, like Confucius way. So Ip Man and Grandmaster Moy Yat, he used us also. For what? Learn modern things. So this helped us a lot understand Kung Fu as a Kung Fu guy, using the genealogy, using our father, our grandfather. So now you could imagine what our grandfather had to do to learn his Kung Fu too, as a Kung Fu guy.
Master Pipahio and Master Liu Imamura, you both touched on a very interesting subject, where we have the chops and we have a lot of the knowledge of that time put into a very careful selection of the characters we want to do that. We want to pass to future generations. But I wonder, since early 90s, we had the internet. And now let's imagine that maybe in 50 years we're going to have more than 1 billion videos of people showing Wing Chun, showing techniques over and over, and it will start to repeat itself. So I wonder, what will be the weight, or can we do anything about that, or do we care about this, that the videos or this will shape the history of Wing Chun? And how much importance do we believe that the chops will have in history in the future? And how can we preserve this, if we should preserve this? Master Pit Pahil, any comments?
1985, I got my first Apple computer for my Mogun. Internet was not out. I still play in Kung Fu Slipper. But I remember when Grandmaster Moy Yat got online for the first time, and he told us that the future of Wing Chun was internet. Even he could see and predict this way as a tool. Of course, just like Wing Chun or like a knife, it's just a tool. It depends on you guys how great you use the tool. Even the chops could be a missed opportunity for many who don't quite have the Kung Fu relationship, the samfa, if you will, from father to son. So even the stone could be a missed opportunity. But this way of us communicating today is a tool that I'm happy you guys are using to further Wing Chun exploration.
Master Leo Mamura.
I have no words to add. I think Master Pahil did everything. That's exactly the way I think.
Master Pete, you said that some seconds before that Ip Man don't teach. Nowadays for us, Ip Man is already a legend. But could you talk about how was the beginning of the work of Ip Man in Hong Kong when he started? Do you know something about that?
No, I don't, but I do know of that Grandmaster Moy Yat lived on the same block as Grandmaster Ip Man in Hong Kong. But we also have another Kung Fu brother, Yossi Bak Danwa, Sunny Tang, who learned his Kung Fu in Hong Kong with Sifu. And so, since Sifu was always with Ip Man, Danwa always with Sifu Moy Yat, so he also had the experience of his Sikung. And as related to me, it was a unique opportunity to spend that time with his Sifu. So I believe this is why it's so rare that this saying, Ip Man don't teach, because there's no Mogun. And he always traveling, Hong Kong, Macau, and various places. Grandmaster Moy Yat had the unique opportunity, because of his position, to spend an enormous amount of time with his Sifu and discuss what? According to him, never talk about Kung Fu. So that's why he warned us. When we went to your Sifu and I, we go to the Mogun, he would tell us, you're not allowed to come in here to get anything. Because this idea of his, the best way to learn is you don't know how you learn. Like you don't know how you learn Portuguese. You don't know how you learn to walk. He told us that's the best. So I can imagine how difficult to have this kind of philosophy and to spend but that's why genealogy is so important, because of the relationship. The relationship was what sustained them and what gave them the correct caring to carry on this unique system that you and I have today, called Wing Tsun.
Master Leo, could you talk about this subject a little, please?
Well, my Sifu, he joined the Kung Fu family in 1957. Of course, everybody knows Ip Man started his Kung Fu family in Hong Kong in 1950. That means 7 years after that. So, what I heard from our Sifu was after the moment. Of course, the previous period, we can listen through our CPACs. So Master P. Pahil and I, we sat few times with our CPAC in the same table to listen them, to talk about what's going on in that time, that period. So, but I think the most important thing is understand how challenging it was to teach Kung Fu those days. Because, as Master P. Pahil said, Ip Man doesn't teach. So, he didn't teach Kung Fu. How to teach Kung Fu? How people in Hong Kong, so westernized, so influenced by the European culture, could understand that? Could imagine that? Even nowadays, it's so difficult people understand that. You know, now everybody, I mean, all over the world, every people in the world, or at least most of them, know about Chinese culture, or at least heard about it. You know, some even are interested in that, because China now is a trendy subject, but still very difficult to understand about how can learn something without being teaching. You know, so this is something very, very difficult. But now, can you imagine Grandmaster Ip Man just arrived in Hong Kong and try to teach in that way? Very difficult. Now, I mean, you know, Master Pahil and I, we have a rough idea about that, because we could felt how difficult it was to our Sifu, Grão-mestre Moy Yat, teach Kung Fu without teaching in New York. It was so very difficult. People complain a lot. And I left because now people complain about me. They say I don't teach people, you know. I believe Master Pahil have the same problem in Philadelphia. The people complain, too much drink tea and food, but not Kung Fu technique. You know, but that's happened. And I remember very well my first day in Moy Yat family. Grão-mestre Moy Yat came to me and he said, Leo, here I don't teach Kung Fu technique. I just teach Kung Fu. I mean, and he make a further question. Do you understood? You know, and I mean, do you understand that? And I said, okay, understood. But actually, I didn't understood. I mean, because I did understand that, because I don't understand how can teach something. I mean, the difference between Kung Fu techniques and Kung Fu itself. But then, after that, more than 25 years, now I can understand lightly, you know, what he wants to, he wanted to say in that moment, which now make make a lot of sense for me. So I believe that's the challenge Grão-mestre Ip Man had in Hong Kong. And I believe he did a great job and so Grão-mestre Moy Yat, because then we are here now and still discussing and still let the further generation complain about, you know, the previous one, because they don't teach, you know. And I believe this is keeping doing that for many, many generations, you know. We don't teach, but our students learn a lot. I think that's the best way to do it, the Kung Fu.
Thanks.
Sifu Larry Mamura, Sipa Pipaheu. You were talking earlier about how to study the genealogy like a Kung Fu guy, like a Kung Fu student, not a historian. So about this matter, I would like to ask what was the impact of the China experience and all the traveling to China over the past few years to our understanding of the Wing Tsun genealogy?
Well, the first time I went to China was in 1986. It could be 87, but either 86 or 87. And I traveled alone with Sifu Moy Yat, and I stayed for 5 weeks. In those days, Fat San looked like 1950s. And only thing had there is a black bicycle, but it was a very old place. And when we traveled to China, people simply lived to eat. But it was a wonderful experience for me. Number one, you have to remember my job was take care of my Sifu. First time in Hong Kong, wow. But I can't stop to even look in a window because I have to keep my eye on my Sifu. Of course, so many people want to visit him and meet him, so we spend most of the time in restaurant. Maybe eat 5-6 times a day. And of course, all in Chinese. Hong Kong's so hot, but the restaurant like freezer. You don't know what to wear. Once we leave the house early in the morning, we don't come back till 2, 3, and this is our schedule. But I tell you a joke. So many famous people want to meet Grão-mestre Moy Yat to buy him a dinner. Of course, at the end of the dinner, when the check come out, Grandmaster was quick to grab the check. But of course, as a good student, I would replace the money in Sifu's pocket. But after about a week, I said, Sifu, could you please do me a favor? He said, yes. Could you not be so quick to grab the check? So he just laughed. But I tell you, it was a historical trip for me because I'm not Chinese. But the first place Sifu and I had to go was pay respect to Grandmaster Ip Man's grave. The first day we could not find it because not like today where there's a path. You had to climb over one grave to another. It was a mountain. The first day we couldn't find it. But as soon as we found it, him and I both relaxed. That moment, my life never the same. I went back to the founding of my Kung Fu. For me, my experience and relationship with my Sifu would never be the same. That simple acknowledgement of pay respect to my elders, to my ancestor, made all the difference. Not only in my mental state, but my fortified commitment to in the transmission and the preservation of our family. So that alone made a huge impact. Not Shaolin Temple, whether North Temple or South. Not all the other Wing Tsun schools that we have opportunity to visit, but the simple fact that I, a foreigner, was able to go back and pay my respect. When I came back, my whole life changed. You might say, I felt relaxed. There's a big impact travel to this place. I have to be honest, for a lot of us, going to the Shaolin Temple was the Mecca where our Kung Fu started. So it was a big thing. But I already had this in me from that simple visit and pay respect to Ip Man's grave. Early in the morning, I could still feel the slight raining because up in the mountain, the mist. I'll never forget. Then my life changed. As Master Imamura mentioned, you could go to China, but you won't find Chinese philosophy. You won't find it. Grandmaster Moy Yat, he was our beacon in this search to understand and our access to the use of Chinese philosophy, not just understand.
Very nice, very interesting. Very touching to me to hear about these things. Like, imagine China was a whole different world in that time. Especially there's the Shaolin Temple was not as touristic as today, no. It's more difficult to know where is it. I believe it's not that popular like today, no. So, Sifu, could you talk a little bit about your experience in China also, please?
Well, my experience, of course, is not so great as my seeing, because the first time I went by myself. So I was not Moy Yat student, which make a big difference, because I had experience by myself without guidance of a Sifu. I mean, qualified Sifu. So, but listen to Master Pahil's words. I remember once when the Grão-mestre Moy Yat said to me, he just came from Hong Kong direct to Brazil, and I believe it was 1992. And he mentioned to me, every time he come back to Hong Kong, the first thing he did was visit the Grão-mestre Ip Man grave, the Grão-mestre Ip Man's grave. Every time. Why? I believe Master Pahil explained exactly the feeling, because that's the most important. So that's why many people said, I want to go to China to visit the landmarks, or they have live in a Chinese way of life. I don't think they have such thing, you know. Of course, everybody can go to China. I think it's a beautiful place to visit. But you must go as a Kung Fu guy. I mean, I don't talk about a Kung Fu guy as a fighter, but as a Kung Fu guy who has a family, has ancestors living there, or who was living there. That's the difference. So 2 days ago, I talked to my sitting master, Mickey Cheng. He lives in Hong Kong. And of course, I talked to the brothers I mentioned. Very soon, a very good Kung Fu brother get married. And maybe we can all go join together to go to Hong Kong, because I like to take my wife to that, you know. And this Kung Fu brother loves Hong Kong. So I said, hey, maybe we can all join into that. So this kind of visit makes sense for me, because I visit a family member, a brother, or when we visit our CPACs or even CSOCs, that makes sense. But just for sightseeing, I don't know if it is, you know. As Mr. Pahil mentioned about Fatsan, nowadays, Fatsan is at the same time as São Paulo. I mean, same size as São Paulo. You know, I mean, around 8 million people. And it's a big city. It's not like the movies. It's not like when Mr. Pahil went the first time. So change everything. So, I mean, I don't want to say, don't go to China. You know, I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's a very trendy, and I believe you must have some experience there, because it's a beauty, of course, a beautiful experience. But don't think, if you have you know, many of us have experience in an authentic Mo Kun, authentic Kung Fu family, like the experience Mr. Pahil and I, we had with our Sifu's family. I don't think we can find such experience in China. Not because our family is better than ours, you know, just because as a Westerners, as a no Chinese, I believe it will be very difficult to find someone as our Sifu to translate accurately what the meaning of Kung Fu without words. Just making us living the Kung Fu. That the way, the style, I mean, the way of teaching, he always insisted it was the Ip Man teaching. So, of course, in the beginning, we don't understand that. Well, I mean, what do you mean that, you know? But daily, I think we start to realize, you know, that's the really, I mean, nowadays, I tell the truth. I believe that's the only way to transmit the Wing Tsun system. You know, I mean, through Kung Fu life. I mean, I can't see another way to do that. You know, more I study, more I realize that. You know, so of course, in China we have great masters, and you can find it, but I believe it still is very difficult to translate to us this kind of experience. Even we live in that, you know, because even Grão-mestre Moy Yat, live in New York, he could, I mean, create an environment, a special environment, so well built up that we can learn the Kung Fu by ourselves. So he's always said, no, you must learn the Kung Fu by yourself, but you must come to me to learn by yourself. So, which is very, very difficult to understand sometimes. Why? If you can learn by myself, I stay home to learn by myself. But he said, no, you must come to me. Otherwise, you can learn by yourself. So, of course, all this kind of, saying or statement making us confused as young people. I mean, a young fellow. But later on, little by little, we start to realize how deep those words are. You know. So yes, I think my experience in China. I mean, my small experience in China was good, but not so good as the Master Pahil. Because he had opportunity to go with our Sifu. I don't. Luckily, and my last travel to China, I could go with my Simo, which was very special to me. Have a very strong meaning because the first time I was going to China with my mother, you know. I mean, because I didn't have opportunity to go to my father with my father.
Thank you very much, Sifu Sipa.
Master Liu Imamura, I want to go back to Kung Fu dimension. I want to go deeper in this statement. You mentioned about the history and the genealogy. So when I went to the school, when I learned about the past, we learned through the history or historical things. So when you talk about the genealogy, maybe you talk about a little bit different. So I want to clarify, if you could clarify more about the difference between historical things and genealogy.
Okay. It's a tough question, Nathaniel, but okay.
Right.
Basically, because Kung Fu, we don't have, beginning or ending. As you know, Chinese, they see things as a process. In that process, we don't have beginning. Even if you see our genealogy, they said we start with an Yun-Chain era, which was the third emperor of a Chinese Qin dynasty. Well, but our beginning start with fire on Shaolin Temple, right? So the fire means something was destroyed to something born, something else born, which always started. So that's the nature of things. To born something, something else must die, you know? There's a cycle of life. So that's like a yin-yang. In Cantonese, yang-yang. So this tells us in genealogy, history is not so important because the Americans used to say his story, you know, because someone can tell any story, you know, and make the history because somebody else said the history is telling by the winners. So the idea of genealogy is, pay respect to the memory of our ancestors. That's the one thing. And this makes very sense, especially in our system. Why? Because we name our system under the founder, which was the Master Wing Tsun. So that's why we call Wing Tsun system. One day, our Sifu mentioned why, we name the system under the founder, so that we can respect her, so we can respect the lineage, then remember the lineage. I remember very well, Nathaniel, when on my first day, of course, I just came from Hong Kong, came back over to New York. I have been practicing Kung Fu in Brazil for so many years. And the first day, I have a long list of questions to make to Grão-mestre Moy Yat, because I believe Master Moy Yat will solve all the answers I have in my mind, So I have a list. Of course, Grão-mestre Moy Yat had a great patience with me because, it's not that easy. Young man from Brazil makes so many stupid questions to him. you know, but he tried his best to answer my questions. One of the questions is what the meaning of Wing Tsun? What the meaning? I mean the words Wing Tsun. Because I listened so many translations and I got confused. And he said, "Don't worry, Wing Tsun is just the name of lady who found our system." I really got frustrated with the answer, you know, because I expect some wise question. I mean, a wise answer about the question, you know. And at least because I listened, Grão-mestre Moy Yat was a scholar, so I believe he could say, I mean, show some books about the translation or something about something. But actually, he just mentioned that. After 15 years, he came back with that subject, that topic, and he mentioned, you know, our style called Wing Tsun, because remind us how important is to respect our teachers and love our parents, and that's the point. So because based on the feeling, the style will flourish. I believe the ancestor did a very good job, because after that, after 12 generations, we still prospered in all over the world, because still we have a lineage, very clear lineage, which we respect our founder. We doesn't care if he exists or not. He doesn't care. We don't care if she is a historical character or not, or we have a proof of her existence. No, the most important for us, because we respect someone who named our style as a founder. That's the point I think is the most important. So based on that, I think this is making us understand even more about the talk about Kung Fu dimension, and plus the difference between history and genealogy.
Thank you. Master Pete Pahil, could you add something about this topic?
Yes, and it's true that we didn't understand in those days. But I tell you, who proved today all of Sifu's knowledge and the grandmasters before him is neuroscience. Neuroscience also proved his philosophy. Because as we say, Ip Man don't teach, Grandmaster don't teach. So we have this funny opinion that you learn by your own experience. But neuroscience, Nathaniel tells us that you and I don't know how to experience as lived. In other words, if you ask someone, do they have a brain? They will say yes. You ever see it? No. Get your hands on it? No. It's all theory. As lived, we don't have experience. Grandmaster Moy Yat knew this was our problem. That is why he invented the Kung Fu life as the way to access as lived experience. But given that we don't know how to experience, we didn't even know how to experience Kung Fu life as lived. But we finally understood. You know who know how to have as lived experience? The little ones. Because they live in something called wonderment every moment. So I invite you also to shelf those beliefs, bracket if you will, and as wonderment, live as a method to live as an access. That's why Master Imamura talk about a process to hang out and let unfold. So the genealogy is so important as a relationship. That's why he said, you're not allowed to come in here to get anything. This makes no sense. But he was correct. So the only hint he give us how to teach is figure out how he learned his Kung Fu. So we try to do our best. And now you are doing the same. You are using Wing Chun brain to figure out how your Sifu got his Kung Fu. And I applaud you for that, because you guys have new challenges, not the same as us, but you have new challenges, and I know with great confidence you will continue to forge this path for the future generations.
Thank you. Thank you, Master Pahil, and thank you, Master Imamura. We're reaching the final minutes of our Google Hangout on air, and I want to take the opportunity to ask one of the questions that we have here from Sifu Owen from Philadelphia. So Sifu Owen asked if their method of not teaching was implemented since the beginning of their mokuns.
How about Leo, you talk to him?
Yeah. I believe this comes from, when I talk about Kung Fu life, we of course mention about Sanfat. And Sanfat is a way of teaching with date on Ming Dynasty. So it's, people from the scholar we call the Neo-Confucianism is a movement who try to revitalize the Confucianism. He used the idea about Sanfa based on Buddhism. So it is nothing new. We talk about before the Wing Tsun style was founded. So some even try to say the Moy Yat invented that. So I would like to clarify the Master Pahil words. He said Grão-mestre Moy Yat invented the word Kung Fu life, not the process. When he mentioned Kung Fu life, is the word. But the idea of Kung Fu life came much before the moment of the founding moment of our style. So this is not new. And plus, I would like to add something in Master Pahil's word. Kung Fu life, in my thinking, is the very suitable way to describe Sanfat, because Sanfat is something we learn by behind just words. It's like you have to live with someone to learn this. Some call intuition or something like that. But that's exactly referred as a Kung Fu. So, of course, Grão-mestre Moy Yat, as a scholar who he understood how many scholars before him refer Kung Fu and relate Kung Fu with Kung Fu life. Actually, we interview a professor, a French professor, François Julien, in Paris in 2009, and he relayed the system, Kung Fu life as a Sanfat, and Kung Fu. Very interesting interview. I expect, I mean, in the future, we can share the interview of all you guys.
Thank you, Master Leo Mamura. Master Pahil, you want to add any comments?
I just want to thank my brother Leo for all his great work and contribution. We always seem to align from the North America to South America. It's good to see your face tonight. And I will send our regards, your best regards from all of you to our brother in Canada. So 40 years of transmission proved Grão-mestre Moy Yat's system was strong enough to continue this transmission. So again, I want to thank all of my nephews there. Please keep up the good work, and a deep appreciation for allowing me to share some time with you guys. Thank you so much, Anato. Great work.
Thank you. And perhaps we'll have an opportunity then in September to have a hangout with him. So let's see.
Beautiful.
Master Leo Mamura, final comments?
I would like to use this final comment to congratulate our Sihin Sunny 10, because the 40 years of anniversary is not that, it's a great achievement, I mean, and plus, it proves one more generation is keeping doing a good work. I hope in the future I could achieve the same mark. And please speak and my regards to Sing, and I wish to be there and to congratulate him personally. So in name of Moy Yat family from South America, please send the congratulations, please.
Certainly will.
And thank you to see you again. I mean, I'm glad to see you, and I hope to be spend someday, few days with you in the end of the year, as we do every year, and always a great event for us to bring some brothers, some students to pay visit to CPAC and the Kofu family of North America.
So to all of our followers that are online, thank you again for your questions, for your input. It's valuable, and we'll be signing off. And as always, infinite love and gratitude.
Thank you, Master Pete, Master Leo. Tiago, any final comments?
I would like to say thanks for the opportunity. I learned a lot, and I also would like to thank my master, Julio Camacho, to let me be here in his place. Thank you.
Okay. Jones Bowman.
Yeah, I would like to thank you, Sipak. Your words are very touching, inspiring, and also Sifu. I hope I can honor the work you've been doing. And also, I would like to thank my Sihins, Renato and Nathaniel, that I had the chance to be part of this hangout. So have a good night.
Good night. And Nathaniel, I have to thank you for helping us with this.
I want just to say thank you, because it was a pleasure to stay with you guys and discuss about the Wing Tsun Genealogy. Thank you again.
Thank you. And I would like to end just saying that we spent 1 hour here, and we were debating whether 1 hour would be enough, and of course we knew 1 hour would not be enough. So we will have other hangouts in the future. And I would like to thank all my, my friends and my Kung Fu brothers here for helping putting this together, and all the folks also in the background and helping us organize. But a special thank you for Master Leo Mamura and for Master Pete Pahil for their participation and being here with us and sharing all their knowledge. And as I mentioned before, this Hangout will be posted on YouTube. And anyone watching this video and have any questions, you can just post questions in the comments in YouTube or on the threads in Facebook, on Google+, and Twitter using the hashtag #BatePapoLeoMamura, and we'll be addressing some of the questions either offline on the social networks or in future Hangouts again. So once again, thank you very much for all your participation, and have a good night, everyone.